Hey folks, Moose here. So it is Sunday. This is normally when I'd be filming my Monday Meltdown videos. Unfortunately, here in Maine, we just got some snow yesterday. So it's a little chilly. Today wind gusts are over 25 miles an hour, so not the best conditions to use the forge. So unfortunately, this Monday Meltdown video is going to be on safety and equipment. So important stuff anyway, not as entertaining, but certainly stuff that people need to know. So let's start off with safety gear. First off, eye protection. Face shields are better than just the goggles. Forge gloves or welding gloves, they work well. I also have a pair of these insulated leather gloves, which I like to use at certain points during the whole process. And we also have an N95 respirator. Now make sure that whenever you wear these things, you wear them properly, read the instructions. This whole COVID-19 thing, being a healthcare professional, I see so many people who use masks wrong, and it's pointless. So make sure that you're using it correctly, otherwise there's really no point to it. Got my leather apron on, which you don't often see in the videos because it's kind of like knee length, but it still makes a difference, especially when you open up the lid of the forge and everything's like molten and ready to be poured. If you're not wearing this thing, giving you just that little bit of air insulation between your pants and that, it makes a huge difference as far as temperature. Otherwise you feel like your kneecaps are melting off. So highly suggest you wear that. Alright, so we got gloves, respirator, shield, this, and steel toe boots, which I've got on. And someone made a comment in the last video that they look like tennis sneakers. I don't know how. They're Timberline boots, they're steel toe, and I keep them very loosely tied, so if I need to kick them off quickly, I can. Whether that's the best thing to do or not, I'm sure is debatable. So yeah, that's pretty much it for safety. One of the other things that I wanted to touch on, and I mentioned in the last video, was the reason for wearing the mask. There are metals, when you melt them, aluminum and copper, there are no hazardous fumes that are created when melting those pure metals. The problem is those metals are rarely ever pure. So I mentioned, like on these heat sinks that I have over here, there's a little bit of like lithium paste or something on the back that you want to avoid because that's could be potentially hazardous, and everyone will say, well, of course, just wipe it off. Well, obviously, the point was that there's going to be times when there's going to be things in here that you either can't get off or you're just not going to notice. Like some of these things could have a varnish or a lacquer to it, and the fumes from that could be dangerous. Certain metals on their own, like brass, contain zinc. Anything that contains zinc, the smoke that comes off of that can be very, very toxic. So again, respirator, always wear it. Better to err on the side of caution. Don't need to prove you're a tough guy. Just put it on and stay healthy. So I think that's all I'm going to talk about with safety. The other tools that that you're going to need if you're going to do this, which again, this is not really a how-to. This is just more like what I'm doing here. So besides the Devil Forge, which is rated the world's #1 forge, it's an awesome unit. You're going to need a few things. You're going to need, of course, crucibles. This is, I believe, a number 6, which means, I believe that means it's 6 kilograms of brass it'll hold. So I like this size. It's big. It fits the forge that I have well, and these clay graphite ones seem to last pretty well. They develop a nice little glass on the outside. I don't know if that's protective or not, but anyways, I like that one. You're going to need molds. You have a choice between cast iron and graphite molds. I've got some graphite molds coming in, so next weekend I'm going to be filming a video with those. So we'll get to see how those work firsthand. I've used the small ones for gold and silver, but never on a big scale. So I've always used these cast iron ones, which work pretty well. These will last a long, long time. They are about the same price as the graphite ones. The graphite ones, though, those have a very limited life. Some of them last a little while. Usually they range them for up to 20 pours. So I went with the cast iron with that. I also have one that a friend of mine made. I haven't tried that one yet, so that'll be on the to-do list. The next thing, I've got some powdered graphite. Now this is something that I learned from bigstackd casting. With this, if you just put a little bit in your molds, especially cast iron molds, after you've heated them, it's a release agent, so the metals don't stick. Sometimes they will stick a little bit, but you know, if you heat them properly and then put the graphite in, you shouldn't have much of any problem whatsoever. Try not to let it clump in there because it'll make lumps or divots on the surface of the bar. Next thing I have is this digital thermometer. I got, let's see, this one, I believe I got this off Amazon or eBay. It was like 50-60 bucks. It's important that you look at the temperature for what they're rated for, because if you're going to be doing copper, which melts at 1,980 some odd degrees, you need to get it a good 100 degrees hotter than that to pour it. So you want to make sure that your thermometer can go that high. A lot of them don't, especially a lot of the cheaper ones. So make sure you look at that before you buy it. Next thing, I've got these. They're Crucible Tongs, which I got. Let's see, I got these a while back. I was going to get one of those little benchtop electric kilns, but decided not to. This is for those little cylindrical graphite crucibles. But this is also great for picking up the ingots, as you've probably seen in my video so far, and putting them in the quench, whether it be water or ice. I've also got these things, which are great. They're very long needle nose pliers. They're good at like dropping things into the crucible while it's in the furnace, and like especially those heat sinks that have fins on them. You just grab it, that way you don't have to get your hand too close to it. This is a draw spoon, or slag spoon. It's just a regular spoon that I found at the dollar store, made out of steel, Chinese steel, so it's, well, so anyways, before you dip it in to remove dross and slag, especially from aluminum, you want to make sure that you put it on top of the forge. Let the front here heat up, because if it's cold, as soon as it touches the metal's going to freeze to it, and it's going to stick, just like this one did. This was my last draw scooping off the last aluminum ingots that I did, which you haven't seen yet, I don't think. And unfortunately, I didn't videotape. But yeah, so it just froze to it and it stuck there. But the next time I do aluminum, I've got one spoon just for aluminum, one for copper, and I haven't done brass yet, but I'll probably have one just for that as well. It's not really necessary to do that, but that's how I like to do it, especially with the crucibles. Metals will often tend to stick to the inside, so what I've done, and I didn't really do a good job of cleaning it afterwards while it was still hot, but I like to keep one for each of the metals. I've got one for aluminum, one for copper, one for brass, and one for silver. Gold, the forge is way too big for gold, at least for the quantity of gold that I have here. So yeah, so we've got that. Next we've got the crucible lifters. So this is for, wow, this is really loose. This is for, once everything's heated and you want to pull it out of the forge. Now these I made myself, following the directions from, what's that science guy? bigstackd casting is the one who recommends them. I don't remember his name anyway. No, the King of Random. There we go, King of Random. So he has an instructional video on how to make these, which turned out pretty good. I had a friend of mine weld these on so that there was no nut head or washer or anything sticking out there that would rub the side of the crucible. Because these, you want to make sure you take, the better care you take of these, the longer they'll last, because those are quite expensive. And the last bit I think I have here is the pouring tongs. So these, if you'll notice, one side is shorter than the other. It's supposed to be that way, so that they can actually use different size crucibles with it. These are, you squeeze together, pick it up, pour, These I got on Amazon. And yeah, so that's pretty much all the equipment I think that you're going to need. Of course, you know, a metal container with water or ice to quench if you want to do that. You don't need to, you can just let it air dry. I do believe that's it. Yeah, I've got a little stand that you've probably seen that I've got fire bricks on. I do that because, you know, my back is still horrible, so I have that propped up on cinder blocks. I make sure that I roast those fire bricks beforehand so there's no moisture in them. One of the biggest things about safety is moisture. You need to avoid moisture at all costs. In molds, that's why you heat them up, to evaporate the moisture out. It may look dry, but just a very, very thin layer of moisture, humidity from, you know, normal air. Once you pour that metal on there, it'll make it pop, and if that pops, it can do a lot of harm. So you want to make sure that you make sure there's no moisture in there. Also, you know, I got a lot of flack from the very first little kind of like extra video that I had from last fall, I think, about being outside on the bricks. Yeah, you got to make sure that, you know, when you pull this out of the kiln or the oven, or the forge, sorry, and you set it down, whatever you set it down on, it's best if that's dry. So keep that in mind as well. Put down some fire bricks or something like that. And I think that should about do it for, well, I'm not going to cover everything, that's a given, but that's most of it. So if you want to go over prices of things, the forge that I have is the 10 kilogram KO wool lined Devil Forge. That one was about $350. The Crucibles, these number 6 Crucibles they're almost $30. And I get these through PMC Supplies, which is an excellent company. They'll sell just about anything that you need. And at very reasonable prices. I mean, if you go on Amazon or use Honey, that little money-saving app, whatever they get you, whatever you get at PMC is going to be just about always the lowest price out there. So we've got $350, about $30 for these. Harbor Freight, I got can't speak today. This thing was less than $10. This respirator was less than $20. These gloves were $14 off Amazon. These molds, I believe, were $40 each. I got them on eBay. This was about $75 on Amazon. These, again, were about $15. These, Harbor Freight, was a set of 3 for $12. This, dollar store. This thing was probably about $7 or $8 worth of steel at Home Depot, plus the screw and nut and washer. And this thing was, I believe, about $30 on Amazon as well. Graphite, you can get that fairly cheap online, pretty much anywhere. PMC also sells a spray-on release agent, which I haven't tried yet, but I heard it's pretty good. So that's about it. So, again, I'm sorry that we couldn't actually melt anything today, but you know, summer is coming, and I'm looking forward to melting a whole bunch of stuff. I've got my neighbor who's a master plumber who has a whole bunch of pipes that he wants me to melt for him. So I'm kind of hesitant to sell my stuff on eBay just yet. You know, I'd like to stockpile it a little bit, but what he has, I can certainly, you know, at least test on eBay to see how well it goes. It's gonna be, you know, a lot of stuff like this, you know, copper with brass fittings and stuff like that. Now, another quick safety tip, and you know, for a lot of you, you already know this. For those who don't, if you're going to be melting anything like this, like if it's pipe, make sure that there's no crimped air pockets in it, because if you have a crimped air pocket and you throw that into a hot crucible, that air is going to expand and that's going to blow. You don't want that to happen. These brass fittings, make sure you take them all apart to, again, make sure there's no little air pockets in there, there's no locked chambers, because again, if that gets hot, it's going to blow. And when you have molten metals, you don't want explosions. But as far as like, you know, it's good to get all the plastics and stuff like that you can. If there's a piece of steel in there that's giving you a hard time, don't worry about it, because once once that's all molten, the steel will actually float on top of the brass, so you can just scoop it out with your spoon. So that's it. So again, thanks to you all for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, do all that kind of stuff. Again, I want to apologize for the 100,000 subscriber giveaway. It's not going to happen this year, but at the end of this year I will be doing some other kind of giveaway, which will include a bunch of medals and some other stuff. So stay tuned, make sure you subscribe, and see you all in the next one.